This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Talahongva. In Oklahoma, the Kiowa tribe is closing down after an employee who is Kiowa tested positive for COVID-19. In March, the Kiowa tribe closed most of its programs and offices, but some, like the social services program, remained open. Nellie Sudel, the tribe's information officer, says the tribe will be closed at least until May 1st. The Kiowa tribe is working on a plan to continue feeding and taking care of the elders. The employee is hospitalized, and Sudel says he's not doing that well. He's between the ages of 50 and 65. Business is booming for the Timok tribe of Western Shoshones. The tribe opened a marijuana dispensary on Saturday in Elko, Nevada. The business has been in the works, and now, in anticipation of cuts to federal funding amid the pandemic, this revenue could help the tribe. Benny So, a consultant for the tribe, called it true economic development and cited its medicinal purposes. And now for an update on the COVID-19 cases in Indian Country, let's go to Jourdan Bennett-Begaye, our Washington editor. Jourdan?
Patty, so it was a long weekend, and right now the number of cases that stand in the Indian health system is 1,601 cases and 59 deaths. Again, that's 1,601 cases and 59 deaths. And I just want to remind people and remind viewers that this is a database that is built by Indian Country Today, and it's separate from the Indian Health Service. The Indian Health Service only has access to data with their direct service facilities and not the tribally run facilities, which include also urban Indian health clinics. Although IHS is doing the best they can to encourage these tribally run clinics to give them the data so they can better manage the situation in Indian Country. And Patty, a lot of these cases did come from one, as you mentioned, the Kiowa tribe in Oklahoma. The Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians in North Dakota had their first case, and they also said, they have to calmly prepare for additional tests that could come up within the next few days or a few weeks. But also, a lot of the cases did come from the White Mountain Apache tribe, and they announced that their Department of Corrections has a total of 13 cases right now. 9 of those come from incarcerated individuals, and 4 come from correctional officers too. And that's already in addition to the 20 cases and 1 death they had within their tribe as of April 13th. So right now that's, and also a majority of these cases came from the Navajo Nation, where they had a reported of 70 more cases this weekend. They didn't release numbers.
More cases
yes,
for the Navajo Nation?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's quite a bit more cases right now. We're still waiting for numbers from yesterday, though.
And this, the Navajo Nation was under its second curfew this weekend. And any update on how many people were pulled over and stopped for violating that curfew?
As of right now, no, the spokesperson for the Navajo Nation said they're waiting for the numbers from the Navajo Nation Department. But, as of last time, the last curfew, they did have 177 citations. So we'll see if people are, will have citations this time around, especially when they had their stimulus checks come out and people were going to town to get essentials or get medicine. And so we'll see what happens with that.
And they now have an order to wear a face covering when they go out.
Yes. So they have, that's in addition to one of the tribes, the Ho-Chunk tribe, who required their tribe to wear face masks whenever they go out. Now the Navajo Nation's getting on top of that. And, they have another curfew this weekend too.
All right. And what other stories are we working on?
Right now we do have stories coming from the pipeline with, just the impacts or the reactions from Indian Country, what people are doing to cope with the situation, and also virus surveillance that's happening right now, the lack of data, the data collection. And I guess one thing that people should look out for now that the Navajo Nation is dealing with these many cases is the State of the Navajo Nation address that will be happening today, or that happened today, which can be found on the President Nez and Vice President Leiser's Facebook page.
Jourdan Bennett-Begaye in Washington, thank you so much.
Thank you, Patty.
And we'll be right back.
This is Indian Country Today. This is Indian Country Today.
We are pleased to have on our newscast today Representative Deb Haaland. She is Laguna and Jemez Pueblo, and she represents New Mexico's 1st Congressional District. Welcome, Congresswoman Haaland.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
How are you doing in this pandemic, and staying at home and, socially distancing? How are you doing personally?
Well, we're staying busy. I can tell you that me and my staff, I have staff here in New Mexico and in DC, we're all working to move the next legislative package forward. So I almost feel like I've been busier here at home than I have been when I'm in DC. When you're there, that your day is filled with meetings and hearings and things of that nature, but you're transitioning from one space to the next, and here it's just constant, right? One Zoom to the next conference call, and it's been very, very busy. But I'm honored and privileged to represent the people of the 1st District of New Mexico and work hard for Indian country across the country. And so we are doing everything we can to make sure that the next legislative package is one that helps everyone in this country.
And we'll talk about that in just a minute here, but you started using that I stay at home hashtag for, and then the blank was there for whoever you were trying to protect. Your sister is a nurse. How is she doing?
She is doing well also. She has shared with me that her drive from her home in the South Bay to she works at the Stanford Medical Center is about cut in half now because there's not as much traffic as there usually is. So she is reporting to work every day, and she is doing well. Thank you.
And that's who you're saying you're staying at home for.
Yes, I stay at home for a lot of people, but she's definitely one of them. I stay at home for my mom, who, we know our elders are specifically vulnerable to this disease. So I have to stay home for her as well.
Okay. And that's, I think when you put it in those terms, who are you willing to stay home for? That maybe makes that message a little more stronger and personal.
Absolutely. And we should be willing to stay home for everyone, for our neighbors, for our friends, for our relatives. We have to care about everybody. And it's almost like, we don't matter, as a person. We have to care about everyone else, right? Our neighbors, our friends, our family. So I feel I'm happy to stay home and do what I'm supposed to do, to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Well, one of the problems that's starting to crop up here is just that funding from the CARES Act for tribes. And today, what is the latest on this, on the disbursement of the $8 billion to tribes and potentially to Alaska Native corporations?
Right. Well, I haven't heard specifically what's happening at this moment, but we fought for that $8 billion. We actually wanted $20 billion. And a lot of us fought feverishly for the $20 billion. The White House didn't want to give anything. They came back with zero. And then they said 3. And so we were able to get 8. And there's 574 federally recognized tribes in the country. And we need to make sure that the money goes to the tribal government so that they can do what they need to do in this emergency situation. And so we're hoping that the administration will do the right thing. But certainly all over, we're in this together. We want to make sure that Indian country has what it needs to fight this virus. And I just want to say quickly that, you know, a lot of us know that Indian country has been behind in infrastructure, and, you know, some places don't have running water, some tribes don't, or their water's polluted, some tribes don't, you know, tribal members don't have electricity. There's infrastructure needs, broadband internet service. Our students haven't been able to get on the internet like a lot of other students have in urban areas. So there's so much that needs to be done. And so we just need to move forward and make sure that tribes get what they need.
Broadband is one area that you're going to fight for in this next round of aid.
Yes, we're actually in this next package where we want to get an emergency broadband piece into it so that tribal communities who don't have broadband right now will have something. And, you know, it's a larger issue across the country. So that's something we've been working on for quite some time. The emergency broadband piece would be great. And I'm sure I can get a lot of support for that piece in the next legislative package, and we'll absolutely work on that.
There are several pieces to this puzzle, broadband just being one part of the puzzle. And then you actually have to have some kind of tablet or laptop or something to, you know, access that broadband. What's the plan to get tablets or computers to the kids on the reservations?
Well, of course, we specifically, I'll be honest with you, that's always going to be an issue. We don't have specifically hardware, you know, computers or laptops in the emergency broadband piece. But certainly, I know there are companies out there willing to help out, and, you know, we can find those. We've had communication with folks. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations that are helping Indian country right now, and so those are things that they can do. Tribes can apply for funding through the CARES Act. As I mentioned, tribal leaders know best what their tribal communities need. And so we are going to be here to support those needs in any way we can.
What kind of update can you give us on the payroll protection plan?
So as you probably heard, the funding ran out for that. There's many of us who immediately launched into moving some more funding forward for small businesses. They need that money. We want folks to be able to stay on the payroll so that they're not inundating the unemployment insurance systems. So we're working on that. So many of us are in support of moving more funding there, and so we hope to be successful.
All right, you are on the Armed Services Committee, the House Subcommittee on Readiness, and also overseeing military personnel. How is the military working in this pandemic? You know, so many of our Native people, you know, we have the highest rate of military service than any other ethnic group in the country. How are they aiding in this pandemic and also being affected by it?
So we had an issue that it was where there was a stop order. There was a stop order to say that active duty military, they were supposed to be moving from one place to another, transitioning with orders. And I know what that's like because I was raised in a military family. My dad was in the Marine Corps for 30 years. That was affecting families. You know, they might have had a rental agreement with their next duty station, and then the stop order prevented them from moving there. And so then they couldn't get their deposits back, or they paid the first month's rent and they weren't able to get that back. And then they started having to pay rent at another place, or all of their furniture was shipped already. These were issues that were affecting military families. We had a mom call us to say her son was stuck in Italy because of this issue. So we wrote a letter to the Department of Defense and hoping to remedy that so that they would be able to support those families who were supposed to be transitioning but unable to transition. So we're always, there's no end to how this health crisis has affected families across the country, including our military families. And so we're hoping that the military is helping to relieve those families of those burdens. And so yes, it's an issue.
So, and then in some places, the National Guard is being called in to help out. And in New York, that's the case. Do you see that happening with the National Guard in New Mexico?
The National Guard, of course, it's the National Guard is under the direction of each governor, and our governor, I know, was using the National Guard to help deliver water and things like that to some of our Indian country, because, as I mentioned earlier, some folks don't have running water. So, yes, our governor has done a tremendous job in keeping New Mexico as safe as she possibly can and directing them to help the communities who need the help. So we're grateful for that.
So one of the unexpected, I guess, if you will, situations that have come up since everyone's been off the streets, and you see these photos of empty streets everywhere. And in Phoenix, Arizona, on Central Avenue, about more than a week ago, there was a photo or a video of javelina strolling down Central Avenue in Phoenix. And we're seeing that more with other wildlife coming out, venturing into the cities and such. You're on the subcommittee for the National Parks and Public Lands. What are you seeing in those areas in terms of wildlife coming back or just enjoying all the space they have now?
Well, we haven't seen any wildlife. I've seen a few rabbits, and my daughter rode her bike down to the river the other day and saw a coyote swimming across the river and then getting out and rolling around in the sand. So, but these are pretty usual for New Mexico. We see coyotes and roadrunners and other wildlife around. But look, I've heard some people say that Mother Earth is getting a little bit of a rest right now because more people are staying home. Pollution is giving way in some areas because there's not as many cars on the road. And, I know there's some areas where our national parks should be closed because they're prone to overcrowding. But other places, like here in my district, we have the Petroglyph Park, miles and miles of trails where people can spread out. And what I really hope is that everybody uses their best judgment. If you have a stay-at-home order in your state, stay home as often as you can. If there's open space that you can go to where you can social distance, we want to make sure that. I was on a letter calling for safe social distancing measures in national parks with the chairman of our Natural Resources Committee, Raul Grijalva from Arizona. And so we want people. I know sometimes you need to get outdoors. You need to be able to be with nature just so you can, feel at peace with yourself. And we want folks to be able to take advantage of those, but to use caution, to listen to your leaders. As I said, if there's a stay-at-home order, take that into consideration, and of course, leave wildlife alone. View them from afar. Enjoy it that way. All the same things apply that we know we should do.
So another thing that's been in the news a lot lately is that push to reopen. And we've seen in Arizona, in Phoenix, we had a rally this weekend people went down, protested all the orders to stay home and said, we should get back to work. When should we get back to work?
We should get back to work when it's safe to get back to work. And
how do we know when it's safe?
Well, we know when it's safe when when the infection rate is going down, when the hospitals can have the ability to treat the people who are sick, where they're not overcrowded. The Democrats have a Reopen America Act that we are moving forward. And there's two main issues with that. One of them, as I mentioned, is to make sure that the hospitals can handle the number of people who are sick. The other thing is to make sure that the infection rate is low, that the infection rate is so low that they're not peaking any longer.
Does the plan include? Does the plan include testing for everyone to see who has the virus?
Well, testing is an absolute yes. Testing is one of the most important things, right? You need to know who's infected and who is not. And
Okay.
I think right now, the administration and President Trump encouraging people to get out and defy the orders of governors of various states who have put in stay-at-home orders is extremely dangerous. And you see people at these rallies, they're not wearing masks, they're not social distancing. If they have contact tracing with some of those people who eventually get sick, it's shameful that the president is encouraging that.
It is quite controversial. Let me ask you about a message to kids. What's your message to the kids out there, the little ones who are watching all of this? I mean, they can't help but notice what their parents are doing, working from home. What's your message to the little ones?
My message to the little ones is really to the parents, right? We all need to set a good example for our children. My daughter's 25, so I don't have to worry so much about her. She was in New York, and before she came back to New Mexico, she was staying safe on her own and really being responsible about her part in this pandemic. But to the little kid, to our youngest children, I want them to know that I am doing everything I can to keep them safe. I want them to know that I am doing everything I can to keep their parents and their grandparents safe. We've heard Indian country often talk about how our elders are precious. We need to protect them with everything we have because they hold the knowledge and the experience, and they're the teachers of our younger tribal members. And I want those young kids to know that we're doing everything we can to keep their elders safe so that they have opportunities to continue to teach them into the future. I know it might be difficult. Young kids, go outside, run around a little bit, but come back inside where you're safe, and wash your hands above all. This is a time when we are using, our personal hygiene is what could save a lot of us. So
pretty simple. What's the first thing you're going to do when you get back to Washington, D.C.?
Well, I imagine the first thing I'll do is go and vote. I don't expect to get there a long time before we have to go on the floor and vote. They've implemented some rules the time we were there. Only a certain number of members could go on the floor at a time. We all had to sit, several seats apart. We also used the gallery so that everybody could social distance. And so that's what I'll do. But, I get outside myself. I take my dogs for walks. I run. When I'm out at the grocery store or somewhere else, I wear my mask, my gloves. I want to make sure that not only am I keeping myself safe, but I'm other people safe as well.
Congresswoman Deb Haaland from New Mexico, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Our newscast is posted on our platform, indiancountrytoday.com at 4 p.m. Eastern. Take care of yourselves. Your life is precious. I'm Patty Talahongva. Thanks for joining us.
This is Indian Country Today.